This podcast is part of E2C Network, where we share the whole Auburn experience.
Where are you, Auburn fans? Welcome to No Huddle, your source for Auburn football news and discussion, part of the E2C Network. I'm AJ Richardson, and I'm also here with my buddy, Jared Davis. It's been a minute, Jared. We took a little bit of a hiatus over the summer, did some family vacations. I went to Italy. I think you did some stuff as well. What have you been up to over the last month or so since we've done a podcast?
Hey, man. Good to be back with you. I did not go to Italy. That sounds like a very cool trip, though. We just did the regular, went down to the Panhandle, went to the beach, tried to stay cool. I feel like it's been, super humid this summer. I know that's typical weather for the South, but I feel like it's been extra. So
it has. I feel the same. Like I stepped out of a air conditioning building, and then it literally hit me. And I'm a healthy guy, but like I could feel it was harder to breathe, and I was like, "What is going on?" Like just the thickness of the humid air was there.
Yeah, I am ready for fall weather, not only because that means football's back, but I also am just ready to stop breathing this humid, thick air.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, all in all, good summer. I have kids, and they start back to school. They start back in one more week, so they got one more week of summer. But
yeah,
it's coming, man. I mean, I think the NFL has that Hall of Fame preseason game this week. That kicks off, quote unquote official football.
Yeah, and preseason for the NFL starts right around the same time Auburn ends up starting all their college football. So, there's going to be some football literally in like a month, which is so exciting to me. Like we're so close to it. And the SEC Media Days is one of those, in my mind, like a milestone of the season's almost here. We got through essentially like the doldrums of the summer where there's just like not a lot going on typically, unless bad stuff happens, which, every year seems like something happens. And, that's just the way it is in the off season. But, this time of year is when things start building right back up. And SEC Media Days being in Nashville, talking generally about kind of the SEC got me really excited. And then specifically, we had Hugh Freeze and then 3 Auburn players, Cam Stutz, Elijah McAllister, and Luke Deal, all representing Auburn. And if you've listened to any of their stuff, did a great job of representing Auburn. And, it was exciting to get back to it. So any kind of just general themes or anything that you saw from the SEC Media Days before we get into other stuff like Big Cat Weekend, recruiting, and just around the corner, literally this week is going to be the start of fall camp. But anything about SEC Media Days that you kind of pulled from?
No, I didn't watch as much as I probably should have. They interviewed Hugh Freeze, and it's always just interesting to hear other coaches' opinions. They didn't say the coach, but they told him, they said, hey, there's a coach out there who has said that you are the best second half adjustment coach in the country. And then they kind of went on to ask his thoughts about that. And I think he went on to, he was very humble and said, I appreciate whoever said that. He did make mention, he said, honestly, I don't plan to be that way. He said, I actually do hold some of my plays back until the second half, so maybe that's why. But, so anyways, I mean, we're all – some people don't know Hugh because, he was at – some young listeners don't know Hugh very well, and we remember him back from Ole Miss.
Yeah. So
it's just good to hear that, the guy can actually coach. And I think we know that. He beat Alabama twice, and he did joke on the SEC Media Day. He's like, it could have easily been a third time. I think they lost 30-29 or something.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and Hugh's not afraid of Alabama or Georgia, which we'll get into recruiting a little bit later. But he's not afraid to go toe-to-toe with them, which you have to have when you're at Auburn. So, from a recruiting standpoint to game planning to getting your players ready for, say, the Deep South Olders rivalry against Georgia or the Iron Bowl. And you can tell he's going to have something planned, ready for it. And that's exactly what Auburn needs. A couple kind of things that kind of stood out to me, just generally, maybe not specific to Auburn, was it was kind of around like the NIL type stuff, which, I feel like every coach is asked about that aspect of the game. But even like Greg Sankey, who's the SEC, kind of over the SEC, he was asked, and I thought it was interesting that he wanted to kind of handle NIL and get that handled by the federal level, which I was thinking, I mean, in theory, sure, get it kind of from a government's perspective, like it's, clear from every conference, like this is what NIL is and what it is not. But let's be honest, I think they're a little bit too deep already. I mean, they open up Pandora's box, and NIL is kind of just like a wild, wild west a little bit in a way right now. And I just don't see that happening unless something really big happens, like a player gets completely screwed by an NIL deal or something happens like that, and then the federal government has to, they are obligated to get involved. So I just think that, I don't know about you, Jared, but I feel like that's probably not going to happen, and NIL is just kind of what it is. And I think SEC should just kind of how we've already done it. Think back to like the pandemic. The SEC was kind of leading the way in what to do, how to play football in a pandemic, how to do it safely. And I think the SEC should just be up front and say, hey, this is how we're handling NIL as a conference, and then other conferences will likely follow suit. Any kind of thoughts about the NIL kind of deal when it comes to college and SEC?
No, I mean, from an overall standpoint, it is kind of the wild, wild west. They got to figure out a game plan. But I think the bigger issue with Sankey, I agree with you. I wish the SEC would do it. I think the bigger issue, from my limited knowledge, is certain states have different rules. Mm-hmm. And so, those trump anything Sankey would say anyways. And I guess that's why he wants it to be on a federal level. However, I agree with you. I don't even know why they would care. I don't know why states care. There's got to be something I don't understand. I don't understand why any government entity is involved in this.
I wonder if it has to do with, there's a big chunk of taxes for every single NIL dollar that goes to players, because they don't get, say they get a $100,000 deal, they don't get all of that. A large portion of it, just like if you were working, your taxes get taken out of it.
Yeah, I mean, there's got to be something to it. I mean, at the end of the day, college, it was set the amateur status, and that's like only amateurs can play.
Yeah. But
from a legality standpoint, even I don't understand why that's ever been an issue from a governmental standpoint. But I'm not a really smart guy. Whoever creates the overall rule that everybody has to follow, I'm in favor of. But I'm with you. I don't think the government, that's not top priority for them. No. I don't think it should be top priority for them. I really think so NIL, it's broken. But I think if they'll fix the transfer rule, and that's something you can do without government help.
Yeah.
Because it literally is, not only is nobody locked in anymore, they're not, the NIL, anybody can come grab your best player next year by offering more money. Well, they can't do that if we have transfer rules.
Right.
And like you're locked into, I mean, listen, I'm all for the kids, right? But you have to have in every organization out there, you have some form of structure. Mm-hmm. There could be a rule of, hey, once you commit to a school, you're committed for 2 years or something, like you have to be committed for a certain amount of time.
Yeah.
Because you can't have this open free agency and NIL. It's more of that's messing up football.
Yeah.
And not just the NIL.
Yeah. I think one of the more visible steps that at least the SEC has kind of taken, and I'm betting other conferences are kind of taking this approach. If they haven't already, they're probably moving towards it, is moving within the conference. So if you would transfer, say, from like Auburn to, I don't know, Tennessee, you have to sit out the next year if you're transferring within the SEC. That's already in place, but I think more rules like that will kind of trim it down a little bit, because right now it feels like, and look at Auburn's kind of roster this year, 42 players are brand new compared to what we finished with last season. That's over a third of your team is switching
Yeah,
either switching out or you got new guys coming in. It's just a lot of stuff, and I don't think that's necessarily sustainable.
No, and we benefited from it this year, but I still think the rules. Yeah, I still think there needs to be more rules on it, and you just can't build. I don't know. Like, I'm all for if your coach leaves, there should be a window there you can get out. But if everything's the same as when you committed to the school,
yeah,
you're just not getting playing time. Like, I think there needs to be a longevity rule there where you gotta you can move on. Your career's not done, but you gotta at least be there a little bit of time.
exactly. And I think that would help. I mean, let's be honest. There's so many players that we've kind of tracked in this transfer portal world that, the grass is always green on the other side. So they're not getting the amount of reps that they're hoping to at the current school. So they end up transferring. Well, if you follow a lot of these players, there's a handful that it did work out and they got more play time at the new school. But a lot of them got the same, if not less. And so to me, it's kind of like at some point there's going to be a break-even point in this. So that's just kind of like a general observation of NIL, the transfer portal, and this new world that we're in. But a couple other things just kind of I wanted to talk about from the SEC media days. First off, Elijah McAllister, he's the Vandy transfer. He's going to be playing Jack for us at Auburn, which for Jack, it essentially means kind of like defensive end / can be a linebacker / can rush the quarterback. There's a lot of different things that they can do. So really excited to see what he can do. You can already tell Elijah is just a leader. He is a man among boys, and he already knows what he wants. He's right now at Auburn. He's already got his bachelor's. He got it from Vandy and master's from Vandy. Now he's working towards his doctorate, which if that doesn't tell you anything, I mean, that the guy is driven. So I'm really excited to see what he can do at Auburn, where we needed somebody. We needed some extra pass rushers since we lost the main two ones from last year. So really excited to see what he can do.
I don't think I could pass a class at Vandy, so the fact that he has done what he did, that's pretty impressive.
Yeah, for sure. A couple other just main things about SEC Media Days. If you haven't heard, Hugh Freeze was asked about Jarquez Hunter. He was essentially said, hey, it's a university matter. I can't speak on it. So it's saying, the university is now getting involved, and so they're dealing with it. It's not just the Auburn athletics department. And at this point, it's just kind of a waiting game of figuring out what that looks like with Jarquez Hunter. So, I mean, we probably won't know until maybe even the week of the first game what actually happens with Jarquez Hunter for this season. But I'm really hoping from a very selfish perspective that we get him just because of how impactful he is on the football field. But obviously that's not my call, and there's plenty of other reasons and issues kind of going on with that that we won't speak to.
Do you think we will actually ever know, or will we just show up or turn the TV on and wait till the starting roster? Like, they are being so tight-lipped on this that I don't know that they'll even say anything.
They may not, and it may just be him walking out of the tunnel on the first game, and we're just like, okay, so he's on the team.
He's either there or he's not. Yeah. I think that's how it's going to be. I highly doubt we actually get an update on it. Yeah,
you're probably right, especially with the sensitivity of kind of what went on. I don't think we'll ever truly know. A couple other things that Hugh Freeze talked about, and this one got a lot of press, was the talk about alignment, and there's plenty of people that are teeing off on this, and I think this is so key for Auburn. Think about the different ways we've started to see, the past few coaches. There's been, think about it with Brian Harsin. He was brought in. Not everybody agreed with it, at least from what we've heard from the administration. And so that created a little bit of a rift. And whenever there's a little bit of distrust in that, things start to happen. And so it sounds like Hugh is very well aligned with the athletic director, president, and everybody, which, what more can you ask for at this point? Now, of course, we haven't played a football game, whenever losses kind of come into play, which let's be honest, we're in the SEC, you're going to have losses. When that starts happening, that's when pressure starts building. And so, but hey, early on, start out on the right foot. It's kind of like when you're dating, you want to start out on the right foot, get things going. And, it sounds that's essentially what Hugh Freeze is doing. And that, I don't know about you, Jared, but that honestly, the alignment piece gets me probably more excited than almost any other thing that was talked about from the SEC media days.
Well, let's just say we haven't landed a 5-star since 2019, and we just landed 2 in the last 4 days. So
yeah,
I think the alignment's there. Yeah, I think there's proof in the pudding on that now. You got to win football games. I mean, at the end of the day, if he didn't go win football games, none of this matters. However, I mean, I think we can't. It needs to become commonplace. We don't need to get super excited. You get excited when you land a 5-star, but I mean, it's a humongous deal for us right now because we don't do it very often. And I think that's definitely a sign that, number one, Hugh gets it, and number two, I think he does have the support all the way up to the top.
Yeah. Well, and you're not getting a 5-star, especially in your first season, not to mention 2 5-stars, without there being alignment. And we're not oblivious. There's got to be NIL money behind both of those deals.
Oh, yeah,
for
sure.
5 stars. And so having alignment with, the On to Victory NIL collective, as well as everybody else involved, coaching staff. I mean, we all saw, I don't know if you did, but like, at least I saw the videos of like those players when they announced, particularly the most recent one from not Camp War Eagle, Big Cat Weekend, DeMarcus Riddick. I mean, you're just thinking, wow, the players are around him, like, love it. The current Auburn players do. And they literally threw Hugh Freeze into the water within like 15 seconds of DeMarcus Riddick saying, "Hey, I'm flipping. I'm coming to Auburn." And you're like, that's so fun. That is awesome. Sorry, that was I'm sorry, I messed that up. I think it was Perry Thompson. But either way,
it's okay.
Yeah.
I two things real quick. Camp War Eagle is what you and I went to, and nobody cared what announcement we made on that. And it didn't look like, I felt like, not to go back to the old coaching staff, but everything kind of looked. It had that staged feel to it.
Yeah.
Of like, hey, we're trying to like fit in. I don't know. Like, it didn't look staged. It just looks like, I really think that Hugh literally loves just being around these guys, and they like, hey, we're going to throw our coach in the pool. And it's just, I don't know. It seemed genuine. I'm probably just making that up, but it doesn't feel like they're trying to like force this, I guess, lack of a better word, like brotherhood. It feels like it's just coming natural.
Yeah. Well, think back to our most recent coach, Brian Harsin. There was an element of like right after his first season, a lot of, hey, he's not like, he's X's and O's type of person, which, there's something to be said for that, but it wasn't like a relationship. And when players started leaving, that was a lot of kind of I think of it kind of as an exit interview. You'd hear from players like, he never really cared about me as a person. He doesn't know me. And if I'm Hugh Freeze, he knows these guys. And he's making that switch, which I love. There's such a stark difference there, and it's paying off in recruiting. So, all right, we already talked about it just a little bit. Let's talk about those new commits, those new recruits that Hugh Freeze has flipped over. We already had Peyton Thorne. So he's in a battle with Robbie Ashford, it sounds like, for quarterback. Joseph Phillips, linebacker, we stole him from UGA. You got to love it. Again, going toe-to-toe with some of the best, if not the best, recruiter at this point with Kirby Smart. And then we also had Malik Blockton early in July, who's Marcus Harris's younger brother. He's a 4-star defensive tackle, which you can always get more and more of those. I feel like with almost any team, you just need more guys like that just to keep guys fresh, especially in the SEC. Which was, for him, I'll kind of mention this, again, kind of to bring up our old coach. He didn't even really recruit him, which is crazy. Like, imagine, like, I'm picturing this, like, I'm at Auburn, my younger brother's about to come to Auburn, and he's a good football player, 4-star. How would the current, like if I'm on the coaching staff, I'd be like, hey, Harsin, go. My brother's here. He really wants to play for Auburn. All you got to do is offer him, and he'll take it. And Harsin didn't do that. Like that's nuts to me. If he's that good of a player, anyway.
Yeah.
So
we could spend a whole session, a whole podcast series on all that.
Yeah, that's just sad. Like, and kind of all the more reason why Auburn decided to fire Harsin mid-season. And thank goodness we had Cadillac step in there, or else, I mean, literally, I think we'd probably have 3 or 4 wins last season, and yet we were able to scrape together some wins at the end of the season.
Yeah, and you can't quantify this, but I think that what he showed about Auburn those last 4 games, I think that's playing an impact on this recruiting. I think that
100%.
You go. We all hear it too. Oh, but probably post COVID, no. But before, you would go to these job interviews, and they're like, "Oh, we got this great atmosphere, this great culture." Every company says that.
Yeah.
But literally, it was on display, especially at the Texas A&M game, of like, no, this really is what Auburn's about. Now, we got some issues going on, and we've tried to hopefully fix those. But the culture has been here through many different coaches.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not saying that makes Auburn any better than anybody else, but it is a little different feel. I mean, it is more of a family atmosphere.
Right.
I can't explain it. I don't know why it is that way.
Yeah.
But I've even had other fan bases say it. And so I think that if you add that along with the alignment, along with good coaching, along with financial support, I think it is a little bit of, not a sleeping giant, right? We're just not in the position to be Bama or Georgia. But we can be close, but you got to get the alignment, and it is exciting that it feels like that part's there. I've rambled, but we're not going to win 10 games next year. For anybody wondering, I'm not saying that, but the groundwork is being laid. I mean, these 5-stars are 2024 guys. They're not even going to impact us next year, right? But that groundwork's being laid.
Yeah, and if you get guys like this to commit now. I mean, think about it. If you get, I think it's a realistic.
Games.
I think it's
a
realistic
losing season.
Yeah, and if you have these guys and you get consistently like a top 10 recruiting class, it's expected, especially in the SEC, for you to be competing not only for an SEC championship, but potentially string a couple of those classes together, a national championship. And so, that's the groundwork that has to be laid, and Hugh Freeze knows that way better than anybody because of how he's been able to turn around and say Ole Miss, where the first season he was there, he had no SEC wins before that. He flipped them around, kind of similar thing around Liberty. Then they get 10-win seasons once he comes on staff, and you're thinking, all right, let's see what he can do at Auburn. And Auburn's in a really good spot, way better than we were at the end of last season. And to your point, it does kind of come back to what Cadillac did to bring that brotherhood back, to serve each other, be disciplined, all the things Cadillac was for, and that laid the groundwork for Hugh Freeze coming in and just taking off. And some of these guys, I forget if it was either Perry Thompson or DeMarcus Riddick, but that was one of the first, they were some of the first people that Hugh Freeze made contact with. And he knows it takes months. It takes a long time to get those players and their families to say, yeah, I'm going to send my kid to your school. And guess what? Over time, the commitment between Hugh Freeze and his staff to go get these guys is paying off. And that's the kind of positive momentum that we have been just craving, is those big names. And it's been so long since we've gotten those. And here we are. Come 2024, we're going to have a couple 5-stars on our roster, not to mention some great high 4-stars as well. And, right now we're kind of sitting at like the 17th nationally, kind of 15th, depending on whatever you're looking at for rankings. But, that's only with 14 commits. So factor in our full recruiting class, we're definitely kind of pushing, if we're not already in the top 10 nationally. So when we get to that spot, then I'll be like, all right, Hugh knows what he's doing, and these guys are really trusting him. All right, so let's specifically talk about each of the kind of top big recruits that we ended up landing. We'll start with DeMarcus Riddick. He's a 5-star linebacker. He flipped. We got him. He chose Auburn over Georgia and Bama. You love to see it. I mean, you could just see when he flipped I saw some people taking some either screenshots or a picture. When he chose, he was so happy. His mama was so happy. It was on her birthday. So there's just a lot of good things around that. And Auburn had kind of been, I don't know, hoping it would happen, and it was official when he put on that Auburn hat. So what do you think about DeMarcus Riddick coming in? The last 5-star linebacker we had was Owen Papo in 2019, and we all know he was just like a staple on our linebacker core for a long time. But what do you think about DeMarcus Riddick committing to Auburn?
Yeah, I think that it was a pretty seismic commit, because it was not only was Owen Papo our last 5-star linebacker, he was our last 5-star period. And like, this was not only a 5-star, it was a guy who technically was committed to Georgia at the time. It was known he wasn't going to keep that commitment, but he was either going to come to us or Alabama. So we basically beat out our two biggest rivals, who dominate the recruiting market. We haven't had a 5-star in forever, and this guy chose us. And when that happened, it was kind of like, oh, okay, we're here to play.
Yeah.
And then it kind of stole Perry Thompson's thunder, because it's been rumored he was going to do it for a while. And once he did it, you're like, oh, that's really cool too. But it was like that. It was like that first nudge of Riddick. It was like, okay, we are here to play. We know what we're doing. It's funny. I was actually talking to a guy that I know who's a Virginia Tech fan last night, and he was mad. He's like, yeah, thanks for taking Riddick, because once y'all did that, Georgia then turned around and grabbed the best linebacker out of Virginia, who was going to be coming to us. It's funny, that trickle down effect, right? But yeah, I mean, to me, that's the biggest recruit we've gotten in a long time, and I don't even care about how good he is. I'm just saying what it symbolizes to me is why it was so big.
Right. Well, you and I kind of know Auburn, even with less talent on a team, can compete against Georgia and Alabama, but it's such a harder way to compete. I mean, for goodness sakes, what was it, 2 years ago we almost beat Bama, and it took like however many, 4 or 5 overtimes to finally do it. And just think, when we actually have the talent level to do that, and we can go toe-to-toe against them and not we got a chance, like a legitimate chance every single time. I love that. So that's what we're, in my mind, kind of building up to, and it's going to take a lot of hard work. Even Hugh Freeze at SEC Media Days said he knows his legacy at Auburn is really going to depend on the 2024 and 2025 class. So both of those classes are going to be so instrumental, and can he be really successful at Auburn? And if this weekend was, essentially within 3 days, if that's any sign, man, we're kind of on the trajectory of really hunting down that next SEC championship and then national championship. So especially if the playoffs, start expanding soon, which, kind of in the near future, that'll happen. Auburn's going to the playoffs and maybe can be a consistent contender in that. So that's exciting to me. Let's also talk about Perry Thompson. 6'3", 202-pound wide receiver, 5-star as well. Committed to Bama about a little over a year ago. Again, he was one that Freeze just relentlessly went after since January, since he's took over the program. And you know what? It worked. He won him over. He won his family over. He's coming to Auburn. You love that kind of wow, we're going up against Bama. Like, I love that. So a couple of kind of just key aspects about him where he could impact Auburn. He's really good at the vertical ball. So, like, I'm thinking about, Sammy Coates or Seth Williams, even, some Duke Williams stuff. Big guys, which we all know Hugh Freeze has. He's definitely gravitates towards those type of guys in the wide receiver room. So to get one of them that's so talented. I mean, Hugh's going to ride him. And, I mean, if I'm a defense, I'm thinking, wow, we're going to probably have to put two defenders on Perry Thompson the whole game, because if he gets out, it's probably a big gain or a touchdown. So that just gets me excited for how Perry Thompson can impact this team. Any other thoughts about Perry Thompson before we kind of wrap up the recruiting segment?
No, I don't know. Honestly, I don't put a ton of attention into it. I mean, as far as like, their actual stats. So I don't have much to add. I assume if you're a 5-star, you got essentially everything any school is looking for. So,
yeah.
Again, just another huge, not only again a 5-star, but a 5-star that was committed to Alabama. There's only about 65% optimism on this, but there is optimism 65% Auburn's way that we'll get another 5-star by the end of next weekend to commit to us. So I mean, I don't know if that's going to happen. He was at Big Cat. I think it's KJ Bolden.
Yep.
And he basically made the comment that after his meeting with Hugh Freeze, he had him wanting to commit right then. But I think it's down to us in Florida State. So we'll see. But I mean, if that happens, that's 3 5s. We had one since 2019, and we may very well have 3 by this time.
I mean,
next week.
We were talking about, what was it, kind of like around March, April, and similar thing happened where we hadn't had offensive line recruits, and then it was,
and then bam, bam, bam,
we got so many, like way more than we've ever had, and so again, to me this just shows how well he can evaluate and his staff can evaluate, where is the need. And to us as fans, we kind of see the need, and the need is getting met. So, I mean, obviously we haven't played a football game yet with these guys, but based on what they had done in the past, or, how high of a recruit they are, I mean, more than likely a lot of these guys are going to pan out. And that's exciting to me. And I need kind of just one more that I think you had mentioned right before this. Dylan Sunda, he's an offensive lineman. He's transferring from Northwestern. That just broke today on Sunday when we're recording this. Big guy, 6'5", 305. I mean, huge. I mean, you can never have too many of those.
Nope,
you can never have too many of them.
He apparently had played. I think he's played every position on the offensive line as well. So very versatile.
Yeah.
So
yeah, and you can always. I mean, we all know this. The last few years, offensive line has been a struggle, and guys getting injured, having flexibility of playing different positions is super key for this. All right, let's kind of transition to the last little small topic. We got fall camp coming up. Literally August 2nd is when it starts. So that's just so exciting to me. That just means football's that much closer. I mean, to me, for this fall camp, everything, not just way I'm thinking about it, but everybody's going to be focusing in on the quarterback battle. Robbie Ashford versus Peyton Thorne. What's it going to be? And right now, which is kind of shocking, this came out, I think, last week or so, Vegas had, apparently, Robbie Ashford was favored. And I don't know where they're getting that from. Maybe it's just looking back at Malik Willis and saying, hey, that's what Hugh Freeze did with a Malik Willis type guy, which Robbie Ashford's pretty similar to Malik Willis. But there's that would be kind of interesting. I feel like a lot of people kind of had Robbie Ashford, even though he's the incumbent, not necessarily winning the position. So maybe there's more of a competition there than we initially hoped, or we initially thought. What's kind of your thoughts on that? How are you feeling at this point about quarterback battle?
Yeah, I mean, I really have no idea. I mean, I don't think Thorne has not done a single practice with Auburn, right? I mean, didn't he come in? Did he?
Yeah.
Did they? Okay, so I don't. He hadn't.
Yeah.
I mean, that's probably what they're going off of. The guy's never taken a snap at Auburn, versus the guy that started, I don't know, 8 or 9 games. I think at the end of the day, I think it's probably Thorne's job. I mean, the thing about Thorne that people don't realize is I think he went 10-1 in 2 years ago, and or 11-1. They won the Peach Bowl. Apparently, last year I spoke with a guy that was a Michigan State fan. He was injured last year. They didn't bring that up till the end of the year, so that kind of hurt his numbers.
Yeah.
So
well, and so was Robbie throughout the
Robbie
season.
was hurt as well. So yeah, that's fair, and that really could have hurt his accuracy numbers. I mean, you can't throw out the LSU game, right, where he threw for over 350 yards, and
Yeah.
I mean, it was amazing. I mean, we almost won the game and should have probably, and it was all because of him. So there is something there with him, and if they can just get him to do the easier pass, I feel like it was the Bo Nix combo, right? Just make the easy passes over the middle, the out route.
Right.
Make those passes consistently so you don't kill drives. Man, if he can start doing that, absolutely. Not only is he the starter, we're talking all SEC if he can master that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think that's all. Like in my mind, still the big question mark is can he do that? I know he wants to make the decision sooner rather than later, but he also wants to let this thing play out to see who's going to really truly win that position. We got tons of fall camp stuff coming up, and then obviously we will start getting into our SEC kind of our Auburn schedule. How are we going to do preseason? What is our predictions for the season? So we've got that coming up, and then before we know it, it's going to be September, and we actually have football that we can watch. And man, it's always so much fun. Love me some Auburn football, and this season, I feel like there's just a reinvigorated sense, at least for me, of excitement. I think Hugh knows what he's doing, and even with maybe not the ideal scenarios of the roster that Hugh Freeze wants, he's put stuff together that on paper seem like he's doing what he needs to. So it'll just be a matter of time before we know how this team does throughout the season. Any other final thoughts before we get out of here?
No, I'm with you, man. I'm just glad football's back, and I don't want to be those guys because it is hot just walking around. So they're gonna have helmets and pads on, but
yeah.
They're probably used to it, so just hope everybody's safe. And yep, I guess we're about to roll over to August here soon, so we'll have football by the end of August. There'll be somebody playing on a Thursday night, so it's exciting times.
So exciting! All right, Jared. Before we get out of here, how can people stay in touch with you?
You can just find me on Facebook under my name, Jared Davis,
and you can find me on Twitter at AJAY_. It's always great to be an Auburn Tiger and War Eagle.
War Eagle.
Thank you for tuning in to today's episode on the E2C Network. On your way out, I want to remind you to stop by e2cnetwork.com. It's your one-stop shop for all our content across our podcast, YouTube channel, and much more. To stay up to date with us, make sure you're following social media accounts such as Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. While our content here may always be Auburn sports heavy, if it's orange and blue, it's what we do. War Eagle.